My name is Alexandra Moore, and at 34, I built a tech company valued at 50 million from nothing but an idea and sheer determination. Then one evening, my father raised his glass, smiled that familiar smile, and announced to Jason, the new CEO of Secure Sync, my own brother, who had contributed nothing, that he was effectively taking over my life's work with my father's full approval. The room spun as I grasped the depth of their betrayal. What they never expected was that I walked away with every patent, client relationship, and key executive. If you think that was the end of my story, you're mistaken. Before I explain how I turned this betrayal into my greatest achievement, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit like, and subscribe to join me on this journey of revenge, served professionally cold. Growing up in Seattle's affluent Bellevue neighborhood, I quickly learned that success came with an asterisk. In the Moore household, my father, William Moore, built his commercial real estate empire through relentless ambition and a firm belief that men belonged in leadership roles. My mother, Margaret, once a promising accountant, had long given up her career aspirations to be the ideal corporate wife. Then there was my brother Jason, 2 years younger, but far ahead in our father's eyes. Jason's participation trophies in baseball earned more praise than my academic achievements. "That's nice, Alexandra," became the standard reply. Whenever I shared my accomplishments, always followed by, "Did you see Jason's latest project?" My interest in technology began at 16 when I built my first computer from salvaged parts. My father walked by my bedroom, glanced at the circuit boards and wires spread across my desk and muttered, "Interesting hobby." That same evening, at dinner, he praised Jason for making junior varsity football despite mediocre athletic skills. "He's got leadership qualities," Dad declared. "Natural charisma. That's something you can't teach." By 17, I was coding simple programs while maintaining a perfect GPA. My guidance counselor encouraged me to apply to MIT, eyes shining as she reviewed my record. But my father dismissed it. "MIT is expensive," he said when I brought home the application. "State school would be enough for your skills." When Jason struggled to maintain a C average, private tutors suddenly appeared. When acceptance letters arrived, Dad somehow found the funds for Boston College for Jason, while I pieced together scholarships for MIT. "Your brother needs connections," Mom explained gently. "You'll be fine anywhere with your tech skills." My tea. I thrived among people who valued innovation over gender. My roommate Allison was the first person to truly recognize my potential. Late into the night, we discussed emerging technologies and market gaps. "You don't just understand systems," Allison told me during sophomore finals week. "You see how they could be improved." I graduated summa cum laude with dual degrees in computer science and business. Jason scraped through with a general business degree after 6 years and 2 academic probations. At my graduation dinner, Dad raised his glass to me, always the studious one, then, with genuine pride lighting his eyes, toasted Jason's new role as Vice President of Business Development at Wilmette Construction at 24. I later learned this position came from Dad's golf club connections and offered a salary that dwarfed my entry-level tech consulting job. For 3 years I worked at Prism Technologies, quickly advancing through the ranks. Each promotion came after late nights and innovative solutions that saved clients millions. Meanwhile, Jason cycled through departments at Wilmette, his lateral moves excused as broadening experience. During a major security implementation for a banking client, I identified a critical vulnerability in how data transfers were secured. Existing solutions were inefficient, requiring huge bandwidth and leaving exposure points for weeks. I worked after hours, developing a more efficient approach. "This is revolutionary," my manager Ryan said after reviewing my prototype. But corporate insisted on sticking with established vendors. That night, I called Allison, now at a venture capital firm in San Francisco. The problem is real and my solution works, I explained, pacing my apartment. But no one's listening. Maybe they're not the ones who need to hear it, Allison replied. Have you thought about going independent, building the solution yourself? Dad scoffed when I mentioned leaving Prism to start my own company. Security tech is dominated by huge players with vast resources. This isn't a coffee shop you can just open. I'm not opening a coffee shop, I said. I've identified a market gap and a solution that could change data security. He sighed, disappointed. Startups fail at 90%. Take the safe path. Prism gives you a steady paycheck. I don't want safe, I want exceptional. That's the problem with your generation. Everyone thinks they're exceptional. He shook his head. At least Jason understands the value of institutional knowledge. He's working his way up properly. Jason, now on his third role at Wilmette, after his previous departments were reorganized, nodded knowingly. It's about paying your dues, sis. I looked between them. My father, who built his empire preaching caution, and my brother, who never took a real risk preaching patience. That made my decision. 2 weeks later, I resigned from Prism Technologies. The journey that led to my greatest success and most painful betrayal had officially begun. The day after leaving, reality hit hard. My savings would cover 6 months if I lived frugally. I converted my spare bedroom into an office, installing a whiteboard wall to map out my security platform's architecture. I named it Secure Sync, a system designed to synchronize security protocols across disparate platforms without performance loss. My first investor meeting was with Brunswick Capital. The managing partner glanced at my prototype, then repeatedly checked his watch. Interesting concept, but you lack business experience, he concluded. Security is a crowded industry dominated by established players. The next 5 meetings followed a familiar pattern: patronizing smiles, technical questions that revealed a lack of true understanding of the innovation, and polite rejections. As a last option, I turned to my father. We met at his favorite steakhouse, where I presented a carefully prepared business plan and financial projections. It's solid, he admitted, momentarily surprising me and lifting my spirits. But then he added, I don't invest in startups. They're too risky. Why not pitch this to your current employer? Let them take the risk while you get a nice bonus, since it would be their intellectual property, not yours. I explained that I believed in this idea enough to stake my career on it. He signaled for the check and said, That's your choice. Just don't come asking for a job if this doesn't work out. With my runway shrinking, I attended a Women in Tech networking event more out of desperation than hope. That's where I met Linda Harris, a former security software executive who had recently cashed out after her company's acquisition. Unlike previous investors, Linda asked detailed questions about the technical architecture. She requested a demonstration, then a second one with specific test parameters she designed on the spot. You've solved the latency problem that's plagued cross-platform security for years, she said. Finally, she asked, how much do you need to build a minimum viable product and land your first client? Linda's $300,000 investment came with hands-on mentoring and introductions to her industry contacts. More valuable than the money was her belief in me. The first time someone with real influence recognized the true potential of my work. With funding secured, I needed a technical team. Marcus Wells, a brilliant security architect I'd worked with at Prism, was my first call. You're asking me to leave a secure job for a startup with no clients and only one funding round, he said over coffee. Yes, but I'm offering you the CTO position and equity in something that could transform the industry. He studied me quietly, then said, send me the technical specifications. I'll review them tonight. The next morning he called. I'm in. 2 weeks' notice. With Marcus leading the technical architecture, I focused on building our core product and acquiring clients. We worked from my apartment, Marcus coding on the living room sofa, whiteboards covering every wall surface. Sleep was a luxury as we refined the platform. I survived on ramen, coffee, and the occasional pizza during all-night coding sessions. Every penny went into development and patent applications for our core innovations. Our breakthrough came 3 months later, when a small credit union agreed to pilot Secure Sync. Their existing security solution was failing compliance requirements, and larger vendors quoted timelines of 6 months or more. "We can have you compliant in 3 weeks, I promised, knowing it would require round-the-clock effort. "If you can deliver that, you've got a deal," their CIO said. For 21 days, Marcus and I essentially lived at the credit union, integrating our system and adapting it to their needs. When their compliance audit arrived, they passed with flying colors, the auditor specifically praising our innovative security architecture. That initial success led to 3 more financial institutions signing on within months. Each implementation refined our product and expanded its use cases. I filed patents on each new innovation, building a significant intellectual property portfolio that would later prove invaluable. As client demand grew, we needed to expand. I hired Rachel Donovan as operations director and James Wilson as lead security engineer. Our team of 4 quickly outgrew my apartment, prompting us to lease a small office space in a converted warehouse. Linda introduced us to Vertex Ventures, whose partner was impressed by our growing client list and technical advancements and agreed to lead a $2 million funding round. The investment valued Secure Sync at $5 million, less than a year after founding. The night after signing the funding documents, my phone rang. It was my father. "I saw the announcement about your funding round," he said, his tone unusually impressed. $5 million valuation? Not bad, Alexandra. My heart shouldn't have leapt at this mild praise, but old habits die hard. "Thanks, Dad," I replied. "With this growth, you should consider bringing in more experienced management. I know executives who might be interested in guiding a young company like yours." Just like that, the moment was gone. Even my success needed his improvement. "We're doing fine with our current team," I said, "but I appreciate the offer." "Just trying to help. Don't get defensive," he responded. "You've got a good start, but scaling a company requires experience you don't have yet." I ended the call shortly after. Returning to the office, my small but dedicated team was celebrating with cheap champagne in plastic cups. Looking at their faces, people who believed in my vision enough to stake their careers on it, I found the validation my father never gave me. We were small, underfunded, and facing enormous competitors, but we had built something valuable from nothing but an idea and determination. The journey ahead would be tougher still, but for the first time I truly believed we could succeed, with or without my father's approval. Secure Sync's growth soon exceeded even our most optimistic forecasts. By month 18, we had 23 employees and proper offices in downtown Seattle. Our client list included 17 financial institutions and 3 healthcare providers, all drawn by our system's superior performance and faster implementation. Our company culture developed naturally around values of innovation, integrity, and inclusion. Unlike the rigid hierarchies I had experienced before, we built a meritocracy where the best ideas prevailed, no matter the title. Weekly innovation sessions became legendary for generating breakthroughs on tough problems. Marcus proved invaluable, not only technically, but as a leader who could translate my vision into clear engineering plans. Rachel created an operations framework that let us scale quickly without losing quality. We added Diana Fletcher as CFO. Her experience with tech startups brought much-needed financial discipline. Our executive team bonded through long nights and shared challenges, becoming more like family than colleagues. We celebrated victories together and worked through setbacks, building loyalty that money alone couldn't buy. Industry recognition arrived when Secure Sync won the award for Most Innovative Security Solution at the annual TechSC conference. Standing on stage to accept the honor, I scanned the audience and noticed several executives from companies that had previously rejected my pitches now taking notes. The publicity from the award attracted interest from larger clients and investors. Blackstone Ventures led our Series B funding round, investing $15 million and valuing the company at $25 million. This capital allowed us to grow our engineering team and accelerate our product roadmap, especially advancing artificial intelligence applications for threat detection. The day after the funding announcement, my father called. "Congratulations are in order," he said. $25 million, that's serious business now. "Thanks, Dad," I replied. "We're growing fast and have several major clients in the pipeline." Pride finally crept into his voice. "I've been telling people my daughter is the founder. The Reynolds entrepreneurial spirit runs deep in the family." It was the validation I had long sought. Though coming so late, it felt somewhat hollow. When he asked to tour our offices, I agreed. On the day of his visit, I proudly showed him around, introduced him to key team members, and demonstrated our latest security innovations. He nodded appreciatively and asked surprisingly insightful questions about our growth strategy. But as we finished in my office, he revealed the real purpose of his visit. "Jason's been let go from Wilmette," he said. "I'm sorry to hear." "That," I responded, genuinely surprised. "Politics," he shrugged dismissively. "The CEO's nephew wanted his division. You know how these things go." I didn't know the full story, but I understood politics was rarely the entire explanation. "He's exploring options, but the market's tight," Dad continued. "I was thinking maybe you could find a place for him here. Something in business. Development, perhaps. The request shouldn't have surprised me, but it did." "Dad, we hire based on skills and experience. What does Jason know about cybersecurity?" "He knows business relationships, things you technologists sometimes overlook," he replied. "Besides, he's family. Families support each other." The irony of this statement from a man who had long favored my brother while dismissing my achievements was not lost on me. Still, outright refusal risked a family rift I wasn't ready to handle. "I can meet with him," I said. "But no promises. He'll have to interview like anyone else." Jason arrived for his interview dressed in an expensive suit, delivering practiced charm. His resume listed 5 positions over 8 years, each described with inflated titles and vague accomplishments. "I can really help elevate Secure Sync's brand presence," he said, using buzzwords that suggested little understanding of our industry. "Create synergistic partnerships with key players in adjacent verticals." Against my better judgment and the concerned looks of my executive team, I created a position, Director of Strategic Partnerships. The role came with clear performance, metrics, and a 6-month probation period, standard for all employees. I made this clear to both Jason and my father. Jason's first weeks showed promise. He was personable, and clients seemed to enjoy his easy conversational style, but it soon became clear he expected different treatment. He missed deadlines, skipped internal meetings, and took extended lunches with potential clients that produced no tangible results. More troubling was his behavior at family gatherings, where he portrayed himself as instrumental to Secure Sync's success. "We just landed Meridian Bank," he told my parents 3 months after joining. My connections at Wilmette really opened that door. In truth, our engineering team had spent months cultivating Meridian, demonstrating our advanced security architecture to their technical staff long before Jason joined. When I confronted him privately, he seemed genuinely confused. "I'm just promoting the company. Isn't that my job?" "Promoting with accuracy is your job," I corrected. "Our team deserves proper credit for their work." As Secure Sync continued growing, my father became more involved, calling weekly for updates and offering unsolicited advice. More concerning were his casual mentions of lunch or golf meetings with board members I hadn't been informed about. Meanwhile, Jason's performance issues persisted. Rachel brought documented concerns about missed deadlines and misinformation provided to clients. Marcus reported Jason had committed us to technical capabilities we hadn't yet developed. He needs more structure and supervision, I concluded during his performance review, and clear boundaries on what he can promise clients. Jason nodded contritely. But later that week, I overheard him on the phone with my father. Alexandra's being impossible, micromanaging everything I do. She doesn't understand the business side. I should have acted then, but family complications clouded my professional judgment, a mistake that would soon cost me dearly. By our third year, Secure Sync reached a $50 million valuation, employing over 70 people, with a client list that included major banks and healthcare systems. We were preparing for a potential IPO within 18 months, working with investment bankers to maximize the company's valuation. With this milestone approaching, my father suggested a family dinner to celebrate my success. His emphasis on my name should have raised a warning, but I was riding the high of recent achievements and allowed myself to believe he was finally acknowledging my accomplishments without conditions. I had no idea I was walking into a carefully planned ambush, one that would force me to choose between my company and my dignity. The Cascade Grill was my father's preferred venue for important occasions. A wood-paneled steakhouse where Seattle's business elite negotiated deals over aged bourbon and porterhouse steaks. Dad had reserved the private dining room, signaling this was meant to be a special celebration. I arrived to find my parents, and Jason already seated, all dressed formally. My father rose to greet me warmly, pulling out my chair with a flourish. "The woman of the hour," he announced, signaling the waiter to bring champagne for the table. "We're celebrating." Tonight, throughout the appetizers, Dad was unusually attentive, asking detailed questions about our recent client acquisitions and technology innovations. My father asked detailed questions, nodding appreciatively as I answered, and even jotting notes on his phone. "I've been watching how you've built this company," he said, refilling my champagne. "Very impressive strategy. The Reynolds business instinct clearly runs strong." Mum smiled encouragingly, while Jason maintained an odd half-smile, checking his watch periodically, as if waiting for something. "We should toast," Dad announced as the main courses arrived, "to Secure Sync reaching $50 million in valuation, a remarkable achievement." We clinked glasses. I allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. Finally, after years of dismissal and doubt, my father was publicly acknowledging my success on my own terms. Then his voice shifted, taking on the tone I recognized from countless boardroom meetings. "To the company's exciting next chapter." Something in his phrasing sent warning signals through my brain. "I've been thinking about the future," he continued, "about what Secure Sync needs to reach the next level, $100 million, IPO, and beyond. We have a solid roadmap," I said cautiously. "Our banking partners are confident in our trajectory." "Banking partners are important," Dad agreed, "but leadership is everything. As the company grows, different skills become essential." The waiter cleared our plates, and Dad signaled for another round of drinks before continuing. After considerable thought and discussions with key stakeholders, I believe Secure Sync needs to evolve its executive structure. He straightened his tie, a gesture I'd come to associate with major announcements during my childhood, which is why I'm pleased to announce that Jason will be stepping in as Chief Executive Officer effective next month. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Excuse me," I managed. "It makes perfect sense," Dad continued smoothly. "You're brilliant with product and innovation, Catherine." No one disputes that. But Jason brings the business acumen and leadership presence needed for an IPO track company. Jason's rehearsed speech began immediately. I'm honored by the confidence the board has shown in me. I want to assure you, Catherine, that your role as Chief Technology Officer will remain secure. Your technical contributions are valued. My role, I repeated, struggling to process what was happening. The board? What board conversations have been happening without my knowledge? Dad's tone shifted to one of paternal condescension. Several board members and I have been discussing this transition for months. As majority shareholders, we feel this structure best serves the company's future. I'm the founder and CEO. I built this company from nothing, I said, my voice steady despite the shock. Jason has been with us less than a year in a role he's barely managing, Mom interjected, finding her voice at precisely the wrong moment. That's unnecessarily harsh, she added. Jason has been networking extensively with important industry figures, she continued. Networking isn't building a company, I countered. And since when do board decisions happen over golf and whiskey without the CEO's knowledge? The investors I brought in understand business succession, Dad replied. They recognize companies reaching this size benefit from professional management. It's nothing personal, nothing personal. I laughed incredulously. You're staging a coup against your daughter in favor of your son, who has contributed virtually nothing to this company's success, and claiming it's not personal. Jason shifted uncomfortably. This hostility is exactly why the board feels a transition would be beneficial. Tech companies need steady leadership approaching IPO, not emotional reactions. I turned to him, seeing clearly for the first time the calculation behind his practiced charm. When exactly did you and Dad start planning this? Was taking the job at Secure Sync part of the strategy from the beginning? Catherine, you're overreacting, Dad cut in. This is a natural evolution. The board simply feels that as we approach IPO territory, Secure Sync needs a certain type of leadership. Presence. A male leadership presence, I stated flatly. Don't make this about gender, he dismissed. This is about qualifications and presence. Jason has an MBA, I reminded him, from which he nearly flunked out, while I built a $50 million company from nothing. Dad's patience visibly thinned. The decision has essentially been made. The formal vote is next week, but I've already secured the necessary support. You can fight this and create a messy transition that hurts the company's valuation, or you can accept the new structure and continue contributing in a role better suited to your skills. The true scope of the betrayal crystallized in that moment. This wasn't a spontaneous idea, but a calculated plan executed over months. My own father had been undermining me with the board he had helped me assemble, all while Jason positioned himself for a role he hadn't earned. And if I didn't accept this generous demotion in the company I founded, Dad's expression hardened. Then the board vote might extend beyond just the CEO position. Think carefully about forcing that confrontation, Catherine. The threat was unmistakable. Accept Jason as CEO, or potentially lose my position entirely. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. This dinner is over. Catherine, don't be dramatic, Mom pleaded. We're just trying to help the company succeed. No, you're trying to give Jason something he didn't earn, as you've done his entire life, I replied. But this time you've underestimated what you're taking. And from whom? My father's expression shifted to one I rarely saw: uncertainty. What exactly does that mean? He asked. It means congratulations are in order, I said, gathering my purse. Jason, you may become CEO of Secure Sync, but I guarantee it won't be the company you think you're getting. I walked out into the cool Seattle evening, my mind already calculating angles and options. They thought they were executing a simple transfer of power, trading on family obligation to smooth the transition. They had no idea what was coming. I drove home in a fog of betrayal and rage, barely registering the familiar streets of my neighborhood. Inside my apartment, I poured a glass of wine with shaking hands and tried to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed incessantly, texts and calls from my parents and Jason that I ignored. Instead, I called the one person who would understand both the business and personal dimensions of this betrayal. Linda, it's Catherine. I need your advice. My father and brother had just ambushed me with plans to install Jason as CEO. I called Linda Harris, my first investor and mentor, and told her everything. She listened without interruption as I recounted the dinner confrontation. When I finished, she was silent for several moments. "First, take a breath," she finally said. "Emotional decisions now will hurt you later. Second, call Sarah Parker first thing tomorrow." Sarah was Secure Sync's attorney, a sharp-minded corporate lawyer who had structured our complex intellectual property protections. "You think this is a legal issue?" I asked. "I think you need to understand exactly where you stand legally before making any moves," Linda replied. "What your father's attempting is both a business coup and a family betrayal. Respond to the business aspect professionally, then deal with the family aspect personally." I barely slept that night, alternating between fury and strategic planning. By morning, I had the outline of a response, but needed to understand my options. Sarah Parker met me at her office at 7 a.m. Listening with deepening concern, I explained the situation. "Let's review the company structure and your agreements," she said, pulling up documents on her computer. For the next hour, we dissected Secure Sync's legal foundation. The news was mixed. As founder, I owned 30% of the company. My father had helped bring in investors who collectively controlled 40%. The remaining 30% was distributed among employees and smaller investors. If my father had indeed secured the board majority as he claimed, they could legally replace me as CEO. However, Sarah noted, studying a particular document, the company bylaws I had insisted on when founding the company. There were some interesting provisions regarding intellectual property. She pointed to a clause I had fought for. Any intellectual property created by founding employees that wasn't directly financed by company funds remained personally assigned to the creator, with the company receiving licensing rights. "You developed the core architecture before funding, correct?" Sarah confirmed. "Yes, and several key patents were filed under my name personally, with licensing granted to Secure Sync," I replied. "And these client contracts?" she continued, reviewing our major accounts. "Many have personal service. Provisions requiring your direct involvement," she said. A glimmer of hope appeared. "So legally, they can make Jason CEO of Secure Sync," Sarah concluded, "but they can't force you to transfer your personal patents. And several major clients have contractual relationships with you specifically that would be challenging to transfer without your cooperation." Over the next 3 weeks, I executed a carefully orchestrated plan. Outwardly, I maintained a professional demeanor at the office, focusing on client relationships and ongoing projects. I attended executive meetings with Jason and my father, offering no resistance to the transition discussions. Meanwhile, I documented everything: my contributions, the development history of our key technologies, and the specifics of client relationships I had personally cultivated. Each night I reviewed contracts and technical documentation, identifying leverage points and vulnerabilities. I met privately with Marcus, our CTO, sharing the situation fully. "They can't do this," he said, outraged on my behalf. "Without your innovations, there is no company." "Legally they can," I corrected him. "The question is, what remains of the company afterward? What are you planning?" he asked. "I'm considering my options," I replied carefully. "But I wanted you to hear this from me directly, not through company rumors." Marcus studied me for a moment. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Your vision is why I joined. Secure Sync, not your father's, not Jason's. Similar conversations followed with Rachel and Diana. Each expressed shock at the boardroom manipulation and affirmed their loyalty to the company's founding vision, my vision, 2 weeks before. The scheduled board vote, I met with our top 5 clients under the guise of routine relationship maintenance. In each meeting, I subtly highlighted the personal service provisions in their contracts and my direct involvement in their security architecture. I'm committed to your success, regardless of any organizational changes at Secure Sync. I assured them, planting seeds without making explicit statements about my potential departure. The night before the board meeting, my father called. "Catherine, this silent treatment is childish. The transition is happening. Fighting it only damages the company." "I'm not fighting anything," I replied calmly. "I'm preparing for tomorrow's meeting, like the professional you claim I'm not." He sighed. "Jason has been working on his acceptance speech. This can be a positive change for everyone if you'll just accept it." "I've accepted many things from you over the years, Dad," I said. "This will be the last." More dramatics on his end. "We'll see you tomorrow at 9 La." I spent that final night reviewing my documentation and strategy. Everything was in place. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened tomorrow would not be what my father and brother expected. For the first time since that fateful dinner, I slept soundly, ready for what was to come. I arrived at Secure Sync headquarters at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the scheduled board meeting. The early hour ensured the office was nearly empty. As I set the final pieces of my plan in motion, Marcus, Rachel, and Diana arrived by 8 a.m., gathering in my office with solemn expressions matching the gravity of the day ahead. "Everything is prepared," Diana confirmed, handing me a folder of financial documents. "All accounts and transactions are fully documented and above reproach." Rachel nodded. "The team communications are ready to go on your signal. Everyone who needs to know will be informed simultaneously." Marcus placed a flash drive on my desk. "Complete technical documentation of all systems with clear delineation between company-owned and personally licensed technologies." I took a deep breath, looking at these executives who had become far more than colleagues. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Your careers and reputations will be tied to this decision. I would understand if any of you chose to remain with Secure Sync. It's no Secure Sync without you." Marcus nodded firmly. "Just a shell with a familiar name." By 8:45, board members began arriving At 9 a.m., the meeting began. My father entered the boardroom with Jason, both wearing nearly identical navy suits. Dad nodded curtly in my direction, while Jason wore an expression of professional sympathy that made my skin crawl. Exactly on time, 7 board members, including my father, Jason, and me, took their seats around the polished conference table, the Secure Sync logo emblazoned at its center. Walter Pennington, the board chairman, called the meeting to order. "We have one primary agenda item today, the proposed executive leadership transition. William Reynolds has motioned to appoint Jason Reynolds as Chief Executive Officer, with Catherine Reynolds transitioning to Chief Technology Officer. Do I have a second for this motion?" Edwin Marsh, one of my father's golfing partners and a major investor, raised his hand. "Second." Before the vote, I interjected. My father frowned, but Walter nodded. "The floor is yours, Catherine." I stood, distributing folders to each board member. "What you're receiving is a comprehensive overview of Secure Sync's current situation and the implications of the proposed leadership change." Opening the folder, I began my presentation. Secure's value proposition and competitive advantage rest on 3 pillars: our proprietary technology, our client relationships, and our executive team expertise. Methodically, I walked through the legal reality of our company's structure, highlighting the key patents that remained under my personal ownership with licensing agreements to Secure Sync. These 7 core patents, including our adaptive encryption algorithm and cross-platform security protocol, are my personal intellectual property, I explained, pointing to the relevant sections. They are licensed to Secure Sync under specific conditions that include my direct involvement in the company. My father's expression darkened as he flipped through the documents. This is a technicality that can be addressed in the transition, he attempted. Actually, it cannot, I countered, nodding towards Sarah Parker, who had joined us as company counsel for this portion of the meeting. Sarah confirmed, these patents remain Catherine's property regardless of her position or employment status. The licensing agreements are contingent on Catherine's involvement as specified. They cannot be unilaterally transferred or maintained without her consent. I moved to the next section, client relationships. Our top 5 clients, representing 60% of current revenue, have contracts with personal service provisions requiring my direct involvement. Jason leaned forward. Clients contract with companies, not individuals. This is standard business practice, not in high-security implementations, I corrected him. These clients specifically contracted for my expertise and oversight. Page 12 shows the relevant contract language. From each agreement, the board members examined the contracts, their concern growing. Lastly, I addressed executive retention. I asked our executive team to join us briefly. Marcus, Rachel, and Diana entered the boardroom, standing behind my chair in a visual display of unity. In the event this board votes to proceed with the proposed leadership change, these executives have indicated they will exercise their resignation options, I stated calmly. Their employment agreements, which you approved, include change of control clauses, allowing their departure with full retention of their equity positions. The room fell silent as the full implications sank in. Walter Pennington removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. To summarize, I continued, the proposed leadership change would result in a company without its core intellectual property, without its top-tier client relationships, and without its key executive talent. The shell that remains would be worth a fraction of Secure Sync's current $50 million valuation. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is blackmail. This is business, I corrected him. You taught me that companies are valued based on their assets, revenue streams, and leadership. I'm simply clarifying. What assets would remain after your proposed transition? We can contest the patent arrangements, Edwin Marsh suggested. Sarah shook her head. You could try, but the agreements are clear and were executed with proper legal counsel. Litigation would be lengthy, expensive, and likely unsuccessful, during which time the company's market position would deteriorate rapidly. Jason, looking increasingly panicked, turned to our father. You said this was handled, that the transition was straightforward. It should have been, my father snapped. Before he could continue, I interjected. We need to recess and consider options. Before we do, I should inform you that I am tendering my resignation as CEO and employee of Secure Sync, effective immediately regardless of today's vote. I placed my resignation letter on the table. My decision is final. The only question before this board is whether Secure Sync will continue with some form of licensing and transition agreement with me and my new venture, or whether you prefer a clean break that would necessitate rebuilding the company's technological foundation from scratch. Walter Pennington looked shell-shocked. New venture? You're starting a competing company. I'm founding a company that reflects my original vision for secure enterprise solutions, I clarified. Competition is inevitable in business, as my father often reminds me. My father stood abruptly. This meeting is adjourned while we consult legal counsel. Of course, I agreed, gathering my materials. Marcus, Rachel, Diana, and I had prepared comprehensive transition documentation for either scenario. We'll be available for the remainder of the day for any questions. As we exited the boardroom, leaving the stunned board members behind, Rachel whispered. That went exactly as expected. Phase 1, I corrected her. Now comes the fallout. The fallout began within hours. Word spread rapidly throughout the company as employees received the carefully crafted email I had prepared, explaining my departure and the founding of Phoenix Innovation. By noon, my phone flooded with messages from employees asking about opportunities at the new venture. The market reaction was equally swift. An industry blog broke the news by early afternoon. Secure founder Catherine Reynolds exits amid leadership dispute. By close of business, analysts speculated on the company's future without its visionary founder. My father made multiple attempts to contact me throughout the day, his messages evolving from angry accusations to grudging negotiation offers. Jason's single text message read simply, "You've destroyed everything. I hope you're satisfied." I didn't respond to either of them, focusing instead on the immediate logistics of launching Phoenix Innovation. The secured office space I had quietly arranged weeks earlier became our temporary headquarters. Essential equipment was delivered. By evening, within 48 hours, 17 key Secure Sync employees had resigned to join Phoenix, including our entire core engineering team. By the end of the week, 3 of our 5 major clients terminated their Secure Sync contracts, citing the personal service provisions, and expressed interest in working with Phoenix. Secure Sync's valuation plummeted as news of the mass exodus spread. Industry publications that once celebrated the company's innovations now questioned its viability without its founding team and intellectual property. 10 days after my departure, my father finally cornered me outside my new office building. "You've destroyed a 50 million company out of spite," he accused, his face haggard from sleepless nights. "I built a 50 million company from nothing," I corrected him and turned to walk away. "When you tried to hand it to someone who didn't earn it, everything that's happened since was the natural consequence of your actions, not mine. The board is considering legal action," he threatened. "They're welcome to try. Our counsel is fully prepared." I checked my watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to build." As I walked away, he called after me, "Jason was right about you. Too emotional for business." I turned back briefly. If recognizing my worth and refusing to be manipulated makes me emotional, then yes, I am. But I'm also the founder of a rapidly growing security company with an innovative product line, a loyal team, and an expanding client base. What exactly is Jason now? The question hung in the air as I entered the building, leaving my father standing alone on the sidewalk, much as he had left me to build my first company without his support or belief. The symmetry felt appropriate. 6 months after the dramatic exit from Secure Sync, Phoenix Innovation occupied the entire 10th floor of a gleaming office tower in downtown Seattle. Our team had grown to 42 employees, including 30 former Secure Sync staff who had followed me to the new venture. The Phoenix logo, a stylized bird rising above digital flames, represented both our origin story and our mission, emerging stronger. From adversity to create something more powerful and enduring, our core products were built upon my original security architecture, significantly enhanced by the freedom to innovate without board constraints. The patents I maintained personal ownership of provided the foundation, while new innovations expanded our technological lead over competitors, including the hollowed-out shell Secure Sync had become. Marcus had taken on an expanded role as chief technology officer and partner, bringing extraordinary technical leadership that complemented my vision. Rachel's operational excellence created systems allowing us to scale rapidly without typical growing pains, while Diana's financial stewardship ensured profitability even during aggressive growth. 4 of Secure Sync's 5 major clients, had transitioned to Phoenix, bringing substantial contracts and industry credibility. More importantly, they brought testimonials explaining why they followed a founder, rather than remaining with an established company name. We contract with Catherine Reynolds, not a corporate entity, the CIO of Meridian Bank explained in a case study that became powerful marketing material. Her understanding of our security needs and ability to translate that into innovative solutions is irreplaceable. Meanwhile, Secure Sync floundered. Without its founding team, core intellectual property, or major clients, the company's valuation collapsed to less than $10 million. Jason struggled visibly as CEO, making desperate public statements about rebuilding and new directions that failed to convince industry observers. My father's attempt to save the situation through litigation proved futile. Our meticulous documentation and Sarah Parker's careful legal work ensured all our actions were defensible and appropriate. After 3 months of posturing, Secure Sync dropped their lawsuit, tacitly acknowledging they had no viable legal challenge. The personal cost of the breakup was significant. My relationship with my family fractured along predictable lines. My father and Jason maintained that I had betrayed the family by stealing company assets, while my mother made tearful pleas for reconciliation without acknowledging the underlying issues. For the first time in my life, I established firm boundaries. I declined holiday gatherings and redirected conversations whenever they tried to discuss business matters. Instead, I focused on building a chosen family among friends and colleagues who valued me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. Therapy became an essential tool for processing the complex emotions of familial betrayal. My therapist, Dr. Hoffman, helped me recognize patterns of seeking validation from people unable to provide it. Your father's approval was never forthcoming because it wasn't about your achievements, she explained during one particularly insightful session. It was about maintaining the family dynamic he was comfortable with. That perspective helped me stop measuring my success by my father's acknowledgement. Instead, I found validation in building something meaningful on my terms, leading with integrity and creating opportunities for talented people who shared my vision. 18 months after founding Phoenix, we secured a major investment from Elevation, partners at a $100 million valuation, double what Secure Sync had achieved at its peak. The investment made headlines, with several articles explicitly contrasting Phoenix's meteoric rise with Secure Sync's continued struggles. The day after the funding announcement, I received an unexpected visitor at our offices. My mother arrived, unannounced, looking smaller and more hesitant than I remembered. "This is quite impressive," she said, glancing around our reception area, adorned with industry awards and client testimonials. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone professional but not cold. "Would you like to see the rest of the office?" As we toured the space, my mother grew increasingly quiet, taking in the energy of the collaborative environment and the obvious respect employees showed. When I introduced her in my office, she finally addressed what had brought her there. "Your father is considering selling what's left of Secure Sync. Jason hasn't been able to turn things around." I nodded, unsurprised. "I've heard rumors about acquisition talks. William won't admit it," she continued, "but he knows he made a terrible mistake. His pride won't let him say it directly." "I don't need his admission," I said honestly. "I've made peace with what happened, have you?" she asked. The question deserved consideration. "I've accepted that Dad and Jason will never see their actions as wrong or hurtful. I've accepted that I'll never get the validation from them that I once sought. And I've built a life and company that doesn't require their approval. So yes, I've made peace with it." My mother looked down at her hands. "I should have intervened," she said quietly. "I saw what was happening over the years, how William favored Jason, regardless of your achievements. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. It was the closest thing to an apology I expected to receive. We all made choices, I said. Mom, I'm focusing on making better ones moving forward. As she left, she paused at the door. I'm proud of you, Catherine. I should have said that more often. The words came decades too late to fill the hole they were meant for, but I appreciated the effort they represented. 2 years after founding Phoenix, our company had established itself as an industry leader with a valuation approaching $200 million. Secure Sync had been acquired by a larger competitor for a fraction of its former value, primarily for its remaining client relationships and brand recognition. Jason had moved on to another executive role, secured through my father's connections. While my father had officially retired from business activities, one afternoon, as I reviewed quarterly projections with our executive team, my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Your father is in reception. He insists on seeing you. I exchanged glances with Marcus, who raised an eyebrow. We can finish this later if needed. After a moment's consideration, I nodded. Send him in. My father entered, looking noticeably older than when I had last seen him. He surveyed the executive boardroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle's skyline before his eyes settled on me. Impressive, he acknowledged. You've built something substantial here. Thank you, I replied, maintaining professional courtesy. What brings you by, Dad? He gestured toward the conference room door. Could we speak privately? After my team exited, leaving us alone, my father took a seat across from me. I received an offer for the family business yesterday, he began, referring to his original real estate company. Significant money. More than I ever thought it would be worth. I nodded, unsure where this was leading. It got me thinking about legacy, he continued, about what I've built and what remains when I'm gone. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. I was wrong about Secure Sync. The admission hung in the air between us. I thought I was helping, he went on, bringing in professional management as I saw it. I didn't recognize that you were the professional management the company needed. By the time I understood what you had built, I'd already set Jason up to take over, and saving face was more important than doing right by the company or by you, I added. He didn't deny it. Pride is a costly indulgence in business. He said quietly, You taught me that, ironically. What do you want, Dad? I asked directly. Forgiveness, reconciliation? A relationship with the daughter whose company you tried to take? I don't know, he admitted with rare honesty. I know I've lost something valuable through my own actions, something more valuable than Secure Sync's market cap. His acknowledgement was something I'd once desperately wanted, but no longer needed. My validation now comes from within and from the community I've built around me, I told him. I can't go back to being the daughter who sought your approval at any cost. That person doesn't exist anymore, he nodded. I suppose I'm asking if there's room for me to know the person you've become instead. It wasn't a perfect apology, but from my father, it represented significant movement that will depend on your ability to see me as I am, not as who you think I should be. I'd like to try, he said simply. Our relationship would never be fully healed. Too much had happened, too many patterns were too deeply established, but over the following months we established a different kind of connection, not the close father-daughter bond that might have been under different circumstances, but a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. Phoenix Innovation continued its upward trajectory, eventually reaching unicorn status with $1 billion valuation before I led the company through a successful IPO. The Phoenix rising narrative proved irresistible to the financial press. My journey, from betrayal to triumphant return, became a case study taught in business schools. The most meaningful outcome, however, wasn't measured in market capitalization or media coverage. It was the culture we built at Phoenix, one that valued innovation, integrity, and individual contribution regardless of background or pedigree. It was the mentorship program I established for young women in technology, ensuring they received the guidance and support I had lacked early in my career. And it was the personal growth that emerged from confronting betrayal and choosing resilience over resentment. I learned that true success isn't measured by others' recognition, but by building something that reflects your values and creates positive impact. The company I built twice, first as Secure Sync, then as Phoenix, taught me that sometimes losing everything you've worked for becomes the foundation for building something even better. The betrayal that could have broken me instead freed me from seeking external validation, allowing me to lead authentically and create the impact I'd always envisioned. As I stand now at Phoenix's headquarters, watching our team collaborate on innovations that will shape the future of digital security, I realize my father inadvertently gave me a profound gift by trying to take what I had built. He forced me to recognize my true value and the power of my own vision, lessons that continue to guide me as both an entrepreneur and a human being. Have you ever faced betrayal that ultimately led to something better? Drop your experiences in the comments below. Each setback contains the seeds of future growth if we're brave enough to plant them. If you found value in my story, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience, and share with someone who might need inspiration during their own challenging times. The most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.